Scaling customer success. This has been an interesting topic for me, and I'll talk a little bit about background here in a couple of slides. But one of the first questions that comes up, and some of you probably face this, is what does scale mean? And I've even seen some people have asked me that in some of our conversations. When I think about scale, it really comes into two buckets. One is thinking about scale almost like it is a segment of customers. You have the customers that are your highest paying customers, and then you have this long tail effect. And so it's the question of how do you try and give the best possible experience to customers throughout that long tail. So that's bucket number one. Bucket number two is about the digital experience. And we've been hearing a lot about digital success today and a lot of great strategies for what that looks like and how it works. And so for me, that's bucket number two for scaling customer success. We learn a lot, we experiment a lot in this long tail, but then with the expectation that all those learnings and all those developments apply across the board. So we'll talk about both of those. First, a little bit about me. So my first foray into technology is the image on the left side of the screen. How many of you know or may remember using one of these back in the day? Yeah, a few of you. So I remember going through my educational process, and in math class, I was introduced to this, and it was pretty scary. A lot going on. This was the smartest thing in our pockets back in those days. And many of you probably remember that. Well, while I was playing around in this calculator, the TI-82, I found one day that you could actually start to program things into it and realize that, wait a minute, I can put formulas that I'm doing by hand or doing a calculation and then writing stuff down. I can just put the whole formula into the calculator. I tell it what A equals, what B equals, and what C equals, and I say run, and it runs this formula for me. This was before apps existed, but that made me very popular in math class. It was very cool. So I'm a bit of a nerd. I read a lot. The Rubik's Cube there is an actual Rubik's Cube that I received during an interview when they asked me if I could solve one. So that's just a fun experience. Hopefully not many of you have had. Other things about me, I really enjoy cycling and running. The picture there with my bike, that was my Silicon Century. So for riders, Century rides are 100-mile rides. It's the marathon equivalent for a cyclist. And so I did a Silicon Century around Austin. We have so many incredible tech companies here in the Austin metro. I've only been here for about 5 years, and that was my way out. Plus, I wanted an excuse to go see the Gigafactory, frankly. It was just super cool. And I knew it was going to be a lot of mileage to get out there, so I'm like, well, I might as well just do a whole loop around Austin. So I had a lot of fun that day, with the exception of maybe 2 flat tires, but that's a separate note. You'll also catch me a lot of times doing mountain trail runs. The picture on the right is a 5K with my family. So I'm all about blending experiences, taking things that we enjoy, that we do, and do them with our families too. Maybe on a personal note, so I have 6 kids, and they span just over 6 years in age because there's 2 sets of twins sandwiched in the middle. So sometimes I joke that I was dabbling in scale long before I got into scaled customer success. You learn a lot with 6 kids that are very close in age. So how does someone like me land in customer success? I started my career before customer success really existed as a thing. And I actually started my own small business and realized I needed to learn a lot more about how to run a business. I made enough to pay the rent because I was doing cost plus pricing. It was terrible. And I realized I need to know how to do this much better. So I got into consulting. I had some incredible experiences there, working with everything from Fortune 100 clients to clients that were doing barely 100 million in revenue. And I learned a lot. I was always focused in technology because that's frankly where I liked to play. Ended up spending a lot of time in data centers, both with hardware vendors as well as software vendors. Got into cloud because that was really emerging at the time. And so had some great experiences. Ended up jumping outside of consulting. And a lot of my consulting experience had always been around sales motion, sales strategy, go-to-market strategies. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this other side of the fence and be an insider and try and be part of the the one who owns the numbers and is responsible for the outcomes, not just providing the advice on what other people should do. And so had some great experiences, worked with a data center operator, one of the biggest in the world, Equinix. They're one of those companies that's behind the scenes. Not many people know them, although I see a few heads nodding, so that's good. Ended up going into Dell, although I was on the storage software side of Dell. So even though many of you probably have interacted with Dell, the clients and the products that I was working with are not the kind of consumer brand type products that many of you associate with the Dell brand. And so scale in those types of worlds didn't really exist. You're talking customer lists in the high hundreds, maybe thousands of customers that are going to be spending millions of dollars for these types of experiences because it's a data center. These are not small decisions. And so one of the interesting experiences that I had in my interview process, so I've only been with Bill for a few months now, was they said, oh, you've managed larger organizations than this, you've managed bigger revenue numbers than this, you probably are going to walk in here with all the answers. I was like, 100% no. I've got a process for how I think about coming up with answers. And I've certainly seen a lot. I hopefully have not broken too many things along the way, but have had a lot of experiences and have a process for how we can approach solving challenges. And so this presentation today is not designed to be an answer for how to do these things for your businesses. It's about a process. It's about saying, what are the principles that I've seen in approaching it within Bill and within Divvy being part of Bill. And hopefully there are some good lessons learned here for all of us. I will also say though, only part of our life lessons come from the experiential line. We all probably have some formal training and background, where we read a lot of theory that may or may not have applied. But life is also about the situational. Those things that hit us that we didn't know were coming, we didn't plan for them. I've been through the dot-com bubble, the 2008 recession, the global pandemic that we all experienced a couple of years ago, and now we're in peaking inflation, or at least for a long time peaking inflation, many of our lifetimes. So one of the big observations I've seen is that the world moves very fast. And so we have to be with our customers, but able to move very fast and be agile as organizations too. That sometimes is a challenge when you're trying to build automation and digital technologies that are not always fast moving. One of the things that I've learned in customer success is that, in my opinion, I think we focus too much on customer success managers. This is not anything against customer success managers. CSMs are fantastic, but they often are asked to do too much. And you probably are feeling sometimes like, I am the gap filler for my organization. I solve all the problems or many of the problems for my customers. And so using the baseball analogy, if thinking about it, if you don't have a Yankees team kind of budget, then hiring CSMs can't be your only strategy. You need other tools in your tool belt to make it work. How many of you have read the book or seen the film Moneyball? Just curious. Okay, we've got a few hands, about half the room it looks like. So maybe for those of you who haven't heard this story, the reason for the baseball image actually was inspired because as I'm working with my team now, and they're trying to understand, these are traditional CSMs that are trying to understand, like, what is this scale concept? And so I was talking to them about this case study recently in one of our team meetings. And it's a story about the Oakland A's. And it was the summer of 2002. They'd come off of some crushing defeats the year prior. They also lost 3 of their top players. And for those of you who may know or may not, the Oakland A's don't have that Yankees budget. They don't have the funds to go out and just buy up the contracts for the best players in the industry. So they have to think about development programs for players and other ways to try and get there. And so here they were already a few games into the season in 2002. The recruiting season was kicking into gear, and they were ranked last or pretty close to last in the league. And they're in the meeting with the recruiters and the coaches and trying to look at, okay, who we're going to bring onto the team to try and win some games this year. And the scouts kind of have a traditional mindset of like, let's look for the guys that get the home runs and the big hits. Those are the people that sell tickets. Well, as the story goes, Billy Beane was the general manager, and he was really troubled with this situation. They did not have the funds to go rehire or hire players that were at the same caliber as before. And he knew, yeah, we could sell some tickets, we've got a lot of loyal fans, but we're not going to win a lot of games because we're just not going to get that level of talent. Well, he'd been introduced that year to an ex-Wall Street statistician and who had introduced him to this concept of you're thinking about baseball wrong, which is kind of interesting, a Wall Street person telling all these people in baseball that they don't know how to do baseball. But as the story goes, he basically said, you're focusing on the wrong metrics. You're focusing on the home runs. You're focusing on the big hits. If you want to win games, you just have to get on base a lot. And so as we think about scale, it's not so much about the big hitters and about the home runs. It's about a lot of getting on base, which means we got to get up to bat more, right? And so a lot of times we were focused on the CSMs, but there's a lot more that goes into building out the strategies that help us to get the kind of volume and getting on base more often. So I'm just going to walk through a few of the things that I've learned. One, and we've talked about this, but number one in my mind is partnering beyond the CS org. So you'll see here, number one was not go out and start hiring your leader or your customer success. If you're building a scaled team or a scaled program, it really starts with partnerships and recognizing that we cannot be the gap filler for the entire organization. We have to partner to make it work. So the way we approach this at Bill is, our main partners, and we saw some great slides on this, but our main partners are product marketing and support. And I like the image here with the rowing team, because with rowing teams, you've all got to be in swing or in consistent motion. If you have one person that's rowing in a different cadence, you're not going to be going in a straight line or even using different power. You need to have a lot of syncs here. And so as I've been coming on board at Bill over the past few months, one of the most important things for me was not only getting to know these other organizations, it wasn't even like, here's how you're going to help me in running customer success, right? This is a collaborative effort. It's, I can't remember, one of the presenters earlier today said, how do I help you be successful in your role? Because there are absolutely ways that customer success can help product in providing product feedback. There are absolutely ways that we can help the marketing team with great customer stories and winning some of the advocacy and endorsements from our customers. There are also ways that we can help support. We often are the ones that are providing training, right? And with better training, there's less demand for support and questions and concerns coming up. And so establishing these partnerships early on, I feel, has been absolutely critical to us so that we don't become the gap fillers, so that we're helping these other organizations so that they can also then return and help us as well. And we can share that load. We don't want to be the glorified support. And anecdotally, when I stepped in, as I was doing my world tour of Bill, I interviewed all the team members that were involved in the scaled effort. And one of the questions was, how much of your time are you just basically handling things that come from support? And they were like, probably about 80% of our time. And so it's kind of this question of, okay, well, how productive is that? I mean, maybe it's, okay, if these are helping us to accomplish our goals, then maybe that's not a bad thing. But a lot of times it was, no, I'm helping them solve problems. But customers, even though I'm solving a problem, they don't want to jump into talking about an expansion opportunity right after they just had this real challenge, even though I solved the problem for them. And so it was kind of like, okay, that's interesting. And so, because a lot of times you ask the customer about expansion, they say, hey, I just had a problem. I maybe need some time here to see if this is going to work before we can talk about some expansions. And so it's about that partnership with the other organizations and establishing like who does what and how do we all work together so that this is a well-oiled machine. Number 2 for me is defining the right kind of measures for success. So when I think about measures for success, I think about these axes. And I don't know, did that pop up? Oh, okay, it all comes up at once. That's okay. So when you think about measures, first you've got individual versus organizational, right? And so at the organizational level, you get a lot of great collaboration because people aren't worried about, well, if I help this other person, now I'm not spending time to hit my own number, right? So a lot of great collaboration at the organizational level, but not a lot of accountability. And so with teams and making sure everybody's in swing, pulling their weight, we oftentimes will go down to the individual level. But then you sometimes get internal competition. Well, if I need to hit my number, and then maybe once I've hit my number, I might come over and help you. And we don't want that either. You also have this challenge of what we can control and what we can't control, the inputs and the outputs. And there are a lot of metrics on both ends of this spectrum. And so we look at all these, and what we found, again, is like the inputs are great because we can control them. Team members feel a lot of control and comfort in these types of metrics. The outputs are frankly what all the executives care about because that's what's driving the value for the organization. And so the way we have found it works really well to connect these dots is, and this is really a big experiment that we've been running over the past few months, is saying, let's not just be in one category or another. Let's performance manage and recognize people and the individual input level, the people that are pulling their weight. But then let's tie compensation to the outcomes, the value drivers, but also the outcomes that drive the collaboration. And it's worked tremendously well. Within just a few weeks of opening this up, I had people in one-on-ones coming to me saying, I've never seen this kind of collaboration before. There's always been this kind of tension when asking people for help. This opened up so many opportunities for us to put our heads together within the organization. Number 3, gaining leverage with technology. We had to talk about it. It's a big part of the digital world. But you notice the first 2 are about laying a foundation. We haven't really done much yet. We just talked to a lot of people, and then we put maybe some ideas together on direction for the metrics. Now is when we're going to start building something. And you notice we still haven't hired people. This is, we'll get there. But first it's about saying, let's have that digital first mindset. I love that term from earlier today, or a tech first mindset. Let's try and do as much as we can with technology as possible. As we think about this customer journey, and you rightly pointed out there are a lot of different bubbles in this chart. I've simplified it to 3, the activation, expansion, and retention. But as we think about this journey, there are so many touch points with customers. And so as we approach this, we think, well, first off, like not every technology is, you can't take one technology and have it apply to all of them, nor do customers really want to consume in that way. A lot of customers like one type of format and others will like another. And so we try and use different types of formats. We have on-demand content. We've experimented a lot with presentations and webinar formats in the past few months. Communications with email. Even though it's an older technology, it's great. People use it a lot. And then also this data-driven outreach, doing a lot with our data science, and trying to get smarter about how we're reaching out. Because with scale, well, with Bill, we have over 400,000 customers in our network. And so we can't be having one-on-one conversations with customers. We've got to be able to get smart with the data and identifying the personas of our customers so that we're creating personalized messages based on what their unique needs are. But it's at a much bigger scale. This is not to say you're going to bite all of this off at once. We haven't done that all at once. But this is a journey. And so you're going to have different things that you try and bite off. One of the philosophies that we have in our home, our 6 kids are not super keen on it, but it's this touch once mindset. You know, it's, okay, we just finished dinner, now take your dishes and put them in the sink. Well, our kids had a hard time getting them to the sink. They would put them on the counter. It's like, well, you made it about halfway there. Right? You just created more work for yourself because now somebody else has to pick it up from the counter and then take it to the sink, and then maybe even more work because then it has to go from the sink into the dishwasher. And so trying to teach our children to say, well, what if you just do the whole motion? Just take it to the sink, clean it up a little bit, and then put it in the dishwasher. One time and you're done. Same applies in our work. Automation isn't born overnight, nor should it be. And there's a lot that can be done before you get to a fully automated solution. Writing an email manually and taking the 15 or 20 minutes to do it isn't necessarily the wrong decision unless you do it over and over and over again. But if you write it once, a really good email, and then you say, that was a good email, I bet there are a lot of other situations. Let me make that into a template. And then maybe the next step is, let me take that template and start putting into Gainsight or other tools so that we can leverage this across multiple people, right? It's one step at a time with these types of journeys. Number 4, building the team for scale. So here we come to our CSMs. There are a couple of thoughts that I've had when approaching this. One is, and this goes back to the scale concept, because when I was looking at the size of the team, when I joined the organization, and the numbers of customers, it's like, okay, can I assign over 10,000 customers to each CSM? Probably not. If you spent just 30 minutes with each customer each year, you'd still only talk to probably fewer than 25% of your customers in your territory. So that doesn't work. So as we think about scale, we think of a lot more about roles, defined roles with programs than we do about territories. And this has actually been a challenge. This was a big shift for my team because, and maybe some of you experienced this as you're stretching into the scaled arena, but the team was initially trying an approach of saying, okay, well, let's take what the managed accounts, these dedicated reps do with their territories of like 50 accounts, and let's just try and replicate that with a bigger list of customers. And like I already outlined with the economics, it just doesn't work. You can't talk to that many customers. You can't have that many one-on-one conversations. This also goes back to the individual versus collective metrics and how they're measured. Because if they're measured on an individual basis, then they're kind of by measure forced into one-on-one conversations, tracking individual opportunities in Salesforce, those sorts of things. If they're measured in the collective, that challenge goes away. And so we think a lot more about how we drive things as a team, as an organization for the scale programs. But then having these defined roles, starting a customer for us is a unique type of activities that's different from ramping up a customer who's already been started. Starting for us, because we're in fintech, is like, okay, there's some basic accounting systems we've got to get connected, bank accounts that we've got to get connected, right? There's some basic functions that have to be turned on before we can start doing. Ramping is just, we have Divvy, it's a corporate charge card, but a lot of people are not used to using like a credit card on their mobile apps. Some of you are, many of you probably are. We're in Austin, this is kind of a tech hub, but not everyone. We work with a lot of small businesses. And so a lot of them are still used to just the physical card experience. And so we're introducing them to this whole new kind of experience. So ramping our customers looks very different from just getting them started. We have other people that are really focused on advisory work. So these are customers that maybe have started but aren't fully leveraging the value from the platform. And so it's about, well, are there some nuggets of information, insights that we can be sharing to help them get better value? This goes back to personas and using your data. Expansions these are the customers that are like butting up against limits regularly. That's a different kind of conversation. And so we have different programs for those types of approaches. And then we've also got resolutions on here. This is where we can see in our product or usage data that there are some challenges. Customers have hit some hurdles. And we need someone who can jump in. We need some programs designed to help customers through those hurdles. So again, it's much more focused on programs. I put the pooling there because to me, this is where the pooling comes into play is like when we think about CSMs, we need people who can kind of jump across these. So we do have, I do have people on my team that are hyper-focused in specific areas, but we pool because again, I'm measuring the team on a collective outcome basis. And so it encourages them to say, okay, if I'm doing all right in my space, but I see somebody else needs some help launching a new program, building some templates and things, the people on the team are 100% aligned with jumping in one area or another. On the right side of this slide, quantity plus learning leads to quality. Anybody in here read Atomic Habits? A few hands, fewer than Moneyball. So hopefully the number of hands will go up soon. Fantastic read. One of the stories that really stuck out to me was the story of University of Florida professor Jerry Ullman. And what he did, he was a photography professor, and one semester he kicked off the first day of class and he said, he split the room in half. And he said, okay, here's the way we're going to do this. Group number one, you're all going to be graded on quality. So you just submit one photo at the end of the semester, and that's going to be your grade, is the quality of your photo. Group number two, you are 100% going to be graded on quantity. So if you give me 100 photos from this semester, you get an A, 90 photos is a B, 80 a C, and so on. And he let the semester play out. And what was really remarkably interesting were two things. First one that's emphasized in the book is the quantity group ended up having better quality photos at the end of the semester. And So he was trying to figure out, well, why did that happen? Well, what's mentioned in the book, though, that I found even more interesting was because they had to do quantity, those students were spending more time in the dark rooms. They were just taking a lot more pictures. Generally, like every day they were thinking about pictures they could take, as opposed to just somebody who was planning it all out and then doing one photo shoot and they were done. And so the conclusion there was that through that process of experimentation, those were the students who were really learning, and they ended up getting better quality photos overall. Now, they were still scored on quantity, but the application there is, especially for the scaled segment, is sometimes we feel the need to have a really solid plan. And sometimes those can take weeks or months of planning and implementation before they go live. I'm very much a fan of, in the scaled segment, we can do a lot today. We try not to break too many things, but there's a lot that we can do today. But again, the first one might just be an email that you spend 15 or 20 minutes on, and then the next one's a template, and then the next one gets into automation, right? There's a journey here. Number 5, being impatient for results. This ties in with my last comment. So as I mentioned, I'm a runner. I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to try and do a marathon. I'd never done a marathon in my life. And a lot of us during COVID picked up some crazy hobbies. This was mine. Well, I didn't try and go out and do a marathon like the slide we saw earlier today, and just go all out. And I wasn't going to go to Boston, right, straight out of the gate. So I had my training plan. The first race that I did was a half marathon, and my only goal was I just want to finish. That's all I got to do. As long as I can do 13 miles and survive, I'm happy. That was great. This is a picture from my second marathon. I actually got on the podium, but this still isn't Boston, right? This was a local trail marathon. A lot of fun, really fun group, but there were probably only 100 runners, and most of them are just there to have fun. It's not like we're looking for a PR. And so I was intentionally finding opportunities to push myself a little bit further each time. Now I've done a couple of marathons, and each time my times are getting a little bit better. I'm still not ready for Boston, but one day I hope I'll get there. We'll see. As we think about our programs, a lot of us, again, are very focused on the strategic growth, but I would encourage all of us to be thinking about what are those quick wins that are ways that we can be experimenting and moving the needle toward those strategic growth areas all along the way. Wrapping it up, as you think about strategy, if anybody ever asks you what is strategy, I summarize it in 2 questions. Is where are you going to play and how are you going to win? The first 2 points here about partnerships, having those conversations and understanding the playing field, as well as the metrics and having that alignment, that's when you're defining where you're going to play as an organization, as a customer success, especially in scale. 3, 4, and 5 here are the how are you going to win answers. As you ask yourself those questions, it's, well, we're going to win because we have technology. We're going to win based on how we set up the team, the types of roles that we have, and the types of motivations that we give them. And then we're going to win because we take action. We move fast. Doesn't mean that we're not going to do the longer term builds, but we're going to build them in increments throughout the journey. One fun one, just as a bonus, because I always like to have a bonus, engage your customer community. It has been so absolutely fascinating for me in the customer success world, in conversations with customers, and I don't take it lightly that our customers' businesses are betting their businesses on us. And in many cases, our sponsors are betting their careers on us. They want us to be successful just as much as we want them to be successful. And this is one of the biggest opportunities that I'm excited about, as well as one of the potentially scariest things because it's such a big concept to wrap our heads around. So maybe we'll come back next year. We'll see how this part of the journey is going. But I'm super excited to hear much more about this because as we think about scale, there's a lot more power if there's more people involved in the conversation and helping us be successful. I'm at time. It's been great. Thank you.